believe it or not, but Griselda is a revenge story with our titular character being an infamous anti-hero. Yeah, you heard me, anti-hero, A-N-T, you get the picture. I respect it because she's bad. Well, I mean, the actress portraying her is bad, so that's all that matters to me. I don't know about you, but I love bad women. They're just so much fun, especially when they're terrorizing men that aren't me. Let me explain.
The Big Dipper.
Griselda Blanco. Now that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Matter of fact, that's a name you don't necessarily associate with fictional villains. The Netflix adaptation starring Sofía Vergara did one hell of a job. When you think of villains, what's the first thing you think of? Cruel? Possibly. Slightly obnoxious? Yeah, they do have that tendency. Brute? Monsters? 100%. But you don't really see good depictions of female villains. I've seen a few in my years. For example, in Invincible, there's Anissa. And in Killing Eve, we have that Russian lady who's a little bit psycho and addicted to sex. But I think the one that was written perfectly just happens to be Griselda Blanco. Now, Griselda is based on the real-life female godmother of... That's a known fact, but this series did something that a lot of series tend to get wrong. It doesn't write women badly. Most of the times, female leads can barely pass the Bechdel test. For those of you who aren't film buffs or TV nerds, that test basically means put a scene together with two female characters and it's quote-unquote passed if they can talk about something other than a male. That's pretty much the gist. Griselda happens to fail this test a few times, but that's not the point. I'll let it slide because I mean, it's Griselda. She's trying to outmaneuver kingpins. Cut her some slack. What I like about Griselda is that she's not really a villain per se. She's more of an anti-hero, or maybe I just have sympathy for the villain. Most female characters depicted in series just happen to be psychopaths for the sake of being a psychopath. It's all they're good for. For example, there are many villains in She-Hulk who are women and I don't even think they realize they're villains. Anyways, I'll spare that series today. She-Hulk's crimes are one too many. Griselda was wronged by Alberto, her ex-husband. You can literally see the progression throughout the episodes of her rising through the ranks, and I like the way the series sent the most chilling message with that title card by saying the only man Pablo Escobar feared was a woman. That just sets the tone for how notorious Griselda really is. That's the equivalent of when a bunch of side characters give lore about the villain through exposition or monologues. The difference is that sometimes it's kinda inflated. Like, why was Tigress glazing Tai Lung when she was telling Poe who he is, only for him to be defeated by a finger hold? Like, bruh, come on. One of the most OP characters in the franchise got his finger in the clutches of a fat panda and went bye-bye. I don't know about you, but that's pretty crazy to me. I'm getting sidetracked. If you've got one of the deadliest dudes in the whole drug dealing business saying he fears you, then you already know that this woman is no joke. At the end of the day, Pablo is the guy who did take a photo with his kid outside of the White House, so that just tells you that even he was quivering in his boots when you said the name Griselda. This show is not a feminist cesspool. There is no, I'm a woman, I deserve better. Yeah, sure, the show kind of falls into that trap when you can see Griselda helping the girls who are hookers, but she's empowering them. We'll call it empowering, but we both know what it really was. I'm not really gonna hold too much of a grudge for that, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, this show is the inverse of Mulan. Yes, Disney's Mulan, and I know it's kind of ironic to compare a movie for kids to a show for adults, but you know how it goes. The juxtaposition is not too crazy when you think about it. Griselda is essentially moving through Miami, moving throughout America, trying to go from a nobody to a somebody in America. You know, trying to make that American dream come true. But illegally, of course. But that's besides the point. Mulan is not accepted and she has to hide the fact that she's a woman and she enlists in the army to help people back home, blah blah blah. You know how the story goes. But they both share the exact same parallel in the sense that Mulan didn't want to be this stay-at-home wife. She didn't want to be making dumplings and waiting for her husband to come back from war. That was boring to Mulan, and it's the same with Griselda. We get to hear some anecdotes from how her marriage was from Alberto's brother. For example, he was so cruel that he even forced her to sleep with his own brother. That's just weird, and it's also strange how Alberto's domineering personality kind of rubbed on Griselda, but she had no choice because she had to survive. I guess that's just commentary on how toxic environments breed monsters, but that's a story for another time. I think that's another thing I like about this show. Griselda doesn't just kill for fun. Matter of fact, you could say she doesn't even really like killing. She's doing it as a means of survival. A lot of psychopaths and a lot of villains, they just happen to have no empathy whatsoever. But with Griselda, it's kind of different. She has a little bit too much empathy, which is kind of weird considering that she's a kingpin or queenpin, if you can call it that. When she sleeps with her then security guard, she tells him, "Oh, go through the back door. I don't want them to see you," meaning the kids and the other people in the crib. Because even though Griselda puts on this front that she's this macho cold woman, at the end of the day, she's just a girl. And I think showing these elements on screen gives a character a perfect equilibrium. It's kind of weird just to see a villain painted as a one-dimensional monster, because the truth of the matter is, nobody's as heartless as they'd like everyone else to believe. When you start to see a villain with human qualities, even though they're not the best person, it's more relatable. Think of all the best villains that you like. The Joker, Tai Lung, the list goes on and on. But those are mostly male characters. Also, another thing I like about Griselda is that it takes the femme fatale trope and subverts it on its head. What do I mean by that? At the beginning of this series, we see that she uses her old friend. Well, she doesn't really use her. She hits up and she's like, "Yo, I need a place to stay." And she comes through with the angle that she has kids and she doesn't have money, blah, blah, blah. And when she's always in these meetings, she just uses the fact that she's a single mother as a scapegoat. But the thing is that Griselda doesn't need no saving. Trust me. She's not a damsel in distress, well, at least not in the conventional sense. She's in distress because she wants bread. She needs the bankroll and she'll do whatever it takes to get it. So just like most villains, Griselda has the perfect level of intelligence and cunningness. I don't know about you, but I respect it. I respect it a little bit too much. Personally, I would like to divert your attention to episode 4. Now, episode 4, I think it really solidified why Griselda was referred to as the godmother of cocaine and how she ended up becoming one of the most revered villains to ever exist. It's that speech. That speech gave me chills, and the best part about it is the fact that it's not in English. Don't get me wrong, some of the hardest lines by villains are in English. Thanos was busy dropping one-liners like nobody's business, but that Spanish just hits differently. Everything in Spanish just sounds way harder. For example, puta madre. Don't ask me for the translation, but I think you can hint at what it means. Puta madre. So there's a scene in the 4th episode where she's busy taking these lower class citizens who are fresh off a boat, and she's using that outcast pain and the fact that nobody pays attention to them to her advantage. She's basically saying, if you do this for me, we're going to rise through the ranks and everybody's going to respect us. Everybody's going to fear us. It's the perfect speech. From cadence, tone, passion. I basically put this on par with the way Scar was talking to the hyenas in Lion King. This one's low-key better though, I'm just saying. But we can also make another parallel here that's kind of somewhat jarring. In most depictions of villains on screen, we always see a male villain talking to his goons, trying to boost the morale of his cronies. I think why this really captivated me as a viewer, because I was like, whoa, you're really a bad bitch. You got all these guys paying attention to you, and it's not because of sex appeal. It's because she speaks with conviction and you're really able to boost people's morale around you. And I think she took a little bit of white powder before this speech because it was a little bit too energetic, if you get what I mean. Also, another staple that I think makes her just way more intimidating. I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes when they hear this, but it's gotta be a part of the package. It's essential. Just look at the outfits. Throughout all 6 episodes, she kept on getting flyer and flyer with each one. This makes sense because she was already married to a dude who had money, but when Griselda became that boss, she just upgraded the wardrobe. I'm sorry, most villains just have these insane fits. Look at Tai Lang. Just look at all the bad guys you know and tell me one who doesn't look fly as fuck. I've never seen a villain who dresses badly. Even when they kinda dress and look like they live under a bridge, they've still got that shit on. But sadly, just like almost every popular villain out there, Griselda has a tragic demise. Moral of the story, be a law-abiding citizen. That's what I would say if I cared about doing the right thing. Griselda is directed by the same dude who made Narcos, so if that's up your alley, check it out. If you're new to the channel, which you most probably are, at the end of the video, you usually always hear 5 words. Griselda embodies that perfectly.